Hey everybody, welcome back to another edition of Cooking Rules with Jules. That's me. I'm Julia Pontanis and I'm here to help make your kitchen experience not only healthy but also incredibly easy. And as we can tell today, yay for tripod. So let's see how this video goes. Today we'll be making a lemon pepper chicken thigh along with an eggplant stack, which I made for Mother's Day for my mom, and it was a hit. And everyone I've given this recipe, they adore it. So what you'll need for today is, of course, a chicken thigh. This one happens to be 4 ounces, skin on, bone in, which I like for flavor. But if you don't like that, then skin off, fine, boneless, fine, whatever. You'll also need an eggplant. I've already used half of this, so just depending on how many people you are cooking for, you won't need, the entire eggplant, but for me, half works, so equal amounts of eggplant to zucchini. Also, I have half an onion here. For the chicken, I'll also need just a little bit of a lemon, so this is a half of a lemon. And we'll also be doing some roasted parsley potatoes, So I have here my fresh parsley, and my potatoes are draining over the sink, as well as my tomatoes to get roasted. And of course, as always, for your seasonings, you're always going to need some good quality olive oil and salt and pepper. So I prefer sea salt, preferably pink Himalayan sea salt, but right now I get what I can take, and that just happens to be good old-fashioned regular sea salt. So let's get to some prep work and wrap this meal up super fast, because I'm sure your family is hungry. I know I am. Can't wait to get started. Now, when you start these meals, it's important to remember that timing is everything. So order of operations, I need to preheat my oven to 425 degrees. So there we go, I'm preheating, don't mind me. Live and in action. And then of course, the next thing we're going to want to do, now that you saw my arm and half my face, is chop up all of my vegetables and get them prepared. So for the eggplant, I'm just going to start by slicing off the end, get rid of the little stem at the bottom. I'm going to slice these into about 1/2 inch thick slices. As you can see, these are pretty big and round. So I'm going to slice these guys up. Nice and easy, right? Because that's what we want. And then I'm going to place it on my lined baking sheet, which I'll show you. So I have a large baking sheet here with parchment paper lined. I prefer that especially for when we're roasting veggies with a lot of water in them, like the eggplant and the zucchini and tomato. And then of course for the potatoes as well, I'll grab a second pan for that. So same rule applies. I'm gonna slice my zucchini up to these nice circles. See, nothing crazy here. Nice little rough chop. Just make sure that they're all approximately the same. That guy came out a little bigger, that's okay. And I'm gonna continue to line my sheet until everybody is on there. Now, I happen to have an heirloom tomato that needs to be used up. Normally with this recipe, in the past I've used cherry tomatoes, so today we're gonna experiment. And I'm just gonna cut these into wedges because I want it to roast and not spill its guts everywhere. So I'm gonna cut out the stem. Flip this guy over, and then just into nice wedges. Oops. Tomato knives are nice, but it's easier to cut it when they're belly up, not down. Cut the stem out of this guy. I got these at a really nice farmer's market in South Florida over Mother's Day weekend, so they are still fresh and ready to go. That shows you quality of good fresh produce, right? Okay. Line my wedges and not throw them. See what else we have here. I'm just gonna kind of get them in between my veggies Next thing I'm gonna do with my onion here, have half an onion left. I'm just gonna cut this into really thin slices and then set it aside. So just super thin. Probably won't even use all that, to be honest with you. Yeah, maybe a quarter of that. So a quarter of the half of my onion, so an eighth of an onion. The next thing I'm going to do is with these baby potatoes here, I'm going to cut them first in half. Move my onions to the side so you can see. Whoops, potatoes everywhere. Slice it down the middle again. Slice it into quarters. So now I have, again, nice little cute potato wedges. So I'm going to continue to do that for the rest of these Yukon Golds. So as you get more familiar in the kitchen, your prep work time won't take as long, because this is the part right here I feel like most people get frustrated with, is in the chopping, because if you're not proficient at it, it takes time, right? And that's with anything. Like, we didn't learn how to do algebra in kindergarten. It's the same thing in the kitchen. You just got to give yourself a little patience and practice. So the more you do it, the better it gets. I'll get my potatoes, and I'm going to stick them in a metal mixing bowl or whatever mixing bowl you have. Once I get them ready, set to go. Got a few more over here. I'm just running out of space. Get that out of the way. You most certainly, if you don't want to do these baby Yukon Golds, these are not paleo per se, but they are Whole30 approved. You could most certainly do sweet potatoes, or even if you wanted to, you could do this with turnips. You could do parsley roasted turnips instead, which are completely paleo friendly. At my house, we are currently working on turnips in the backyard, as well as squash and heirloom tomatoes. And I'm in Florida, and it's about ready to get really hot, so we're gonna see how that works. All right, almost done. Ta-da! Okay, next comes the parsley. So what I'm going to do is take the ends, the little florets there, and I'm just gonna start to peel them off. And this is a fun little project if you have little ones in the kitchen. I'm sure they would love to get their hands all in and pulling stuff, so put their hands to work, or perhaps your significant other or your friend or whatever. But cooking in the kitchen with someone else is always way more fun than doing it by yourself. Trust me. Although I really enjoy doing this. So I'm going to continue to get the heads off of my parsley and give it a nice rough chop. So even if the stem is in there, that's okay too. And I think we're going to call it a day on that, because who wants to watch me peel parsley all day? All right, so what I'm going to start, always make a nice little kind of square. So I keep one hand here to prevent things from going, and then the other hand I'm going to do a nice little rock with my knife, right? So I'm going to come through, give it a nice little chop, make sure I don't get my fingers, go back over it. I'm going to recenter, and then I'm going to come back the opposite way and give this a nice little chop, and I'm just going to follow along where the parsley leads me until it's nice and finely chopped. So just kind of back and forth, keep gathering it. Hopefully you can see me behind the counter. All right, so once that's done, I'm gonna take that, just throw it into my bowl of my potatoes. You can also use garlic. I know that some people are really sensitive to garlic, or they just don't like it, but for me today, I have this half a head of garlic that I'd like to use up. So I'm gonna do kind of the same thing. Potatoes can go back there for now. Going to start with a nice kind of like rocking motion of my knife, keeping the tip of the knife down so I can rock it against the cutting board, and then just keep going back and forth over it. So again, chopping it up, cutting it back and forth, cleaning it off, missed a chunk. The idea is just to get it chopped nice and fine. If this is too much for you and you have a microplane, then you can always microplane your garlic too, and then it comes out more like a paste. All right, boom, rock and roll. That was easy enough, right? Okay, garlic in with the potatoes and the parsley. Now I'm going to take my handy dandy kitchen towel, my cooking towel, and if you haven't read my blog yet, I just posted my 10 essential cooking items, and hand towels for cooking are on there. So I'm gonna eyeball this with the olive oil. I pour with my left hand because I'm always a little bit more gingerly. I am right dominant. So I'm just gonna kind of give these guys a little coat of olive oil. I'm also going to take my salts, sea salts, give it a grind. Most of the time I count to 10. That's kind of how I measure my salt on potatoes, and then just gonna season with some pepper to taste. Oh, I'm running out of pepper. How interesting. Okay, oh, that's right, because I spilled it the other day. So now I'm just gonna give these guys a nice toss and get them ready to roll on another baking sheet. In the meantime, as I walk out of the picture, move all this stuff. Okay. Remember those veggies that we placed on the baking sheet? What we're going to do now, in this little dish here, I have poured out olive oil. I'm going to take my basting brush, which I left over here. Cabinet just opened. So I'm going to take a basting brush. This one is silicone and I got it at the Dollar Tree. Throw it in the dishwasher once you're done, and I'm going to have a little paint project. So I'm just going to lightly paint my veggies with olive oil. Eggplant is like a little sponge, so if you put too much olive oil on it, it will actually end up becoming kind of like greasy and mushy. I'm sure if you've ever had eggplant parm that's been overly saturated with oil, we all know what that tastes like. It's no good. But we just want to enhance these veggies. We don't want to douse them. So I'm going to give them a nice coat on each side, including my tomatoes. Don't forget those guys. Okay, back with my salt grinder, and I'm just going to go over. Now remember, season as you go. So you can always add more salt, you can't take it away. So I know how I like my food prepared, what's going to give the most optimal flavor, and then eventually you'll get to know that as well in your kitchen. Okay, see? Simple, right? Boom. Gonna flip all these guys over, including my tomatoes. 2 hands at a time. Again, if you have small people in your kitchen, you have kids or nieces, nephews, grandkids, kids you're babysitting, or just people you need to put to work, you could always have them do like finger paint. So just take their hand in the olive oil and then coat the veggies that way. Maybe you just want to have some finger paint time yourself. That's okay too. Almost done here with my veggies. Especially now that it's summertime and they're very, very bountiful, things like zucchini, summer squash, eggplant. You can use the same formula for several different vegetables. So don't always feel like you have to use eggplant. You can do zucchini, you can do summer squash, of course roasted onions. I'm sure I'll come to think of more things. And again, season. So remember, everything I do in my kitchen is it's my basic formula, right? You always have the certain steps you go through to create different meals. So it's like having a math equation with different variables. So it's always the plug and chug, right? So I'm always going to start with my preparation first. I'm gonna cook the thing that takes the longest first. So veggies take the longest, I'm gonna get those rolling. And then I'm gonna do whatever cooks in progression from there on out. That way I don't end up with sad cold vegetables, because that's terrible. So let's get these in the oven, including the potatoes, and start on the chicken. All right, so now that we're ready to do our chicken, first thing I'm gonna start with is my half lemon here. I'm gonna start by cutting really teeny tiny thin slices, like micro thin. And I'm gonna do, for my piece of chicken, I'm gonna do about 4. So I'm gonna slice it nice and thin. 1, 2, oops, 2.5. It's not always perfect, okay? Whatever it is in your kitchen, just make it work. All right, so 3, 4. So that's basically what I have, is these really translucent little pieces. For my chicken to get it started, of course, I'm always gonna season, and when I say season, I do mean salt and pepper. So salt one side, skin side first. Can't forget my tongs, flip it over. Make sure you're practicing safe food handling practices too. Remember, you don't wanna touch raw chicken and then let it get everywhere else and cross-contaminate. I'm also going to use some fresh cracked pepper on this one, if I can get the lid off. And again, one side then the other. I'm also gonna get my pan started here. So I'm gonna do this over a medium heat. It's really important to remember, anytime you're doing a fattier piece of meat and you're adding in olive oil, you're adding fat on top of fat. And if there's any moisture in there, it's going to explode, and it can either give you burns or it's going to make a mess. So just make sure you're being mindful. This piece of chicken that I have has a pretty decent layer of fattiness on it. So I'm going to get this over a medium heat and just be mindful of how much olive oil I'm pouring over. Put it down skin side down and then step away. For the rest of this lemon, I'm gonna go ahead and squeeze it into my bowl so I have it left over to finish the chicken. And I'm gonna grab my handy dandy fork. I'm gonna stick it up in there. I'm gonna squeeze and then just gently work it back and forth and get all the juice out. Oops. This is a really fresh and juicy lemon, just in time for summer. All right, perfect. So my pan is still heating up. It's not quite ready yet. I do the hand test. You could use a digital thermometer as well. I just get to know my range, and I know when it's ready. So get to know your heat, just like anything else. Know your body before you work out. Know your kitchen range when it needs to be heated up. Okay, so my pan's been heating for approximately 3 to 5 minutes. I'm gonna go ahead and get my chicken thigh in there, and hopefully I'll hear a nice little sizzle when I put it skin side down. And of course, I'm gonna be careful not to, get my skin any splatters. So chicken's in there. I'm going to brown it on each side. I'm gonna say approximately 5 to 6 minutes per side. When I flip it over and finish cooking on the second side around, I'm going to drizzle that lemon juice on top of it and then put my lemons in there, and then I'm gonna take that piece of chicken out of my pan, unless you have oven safe pans, and throw it on my baking sheet and continue to roast it till the end. So what that's gonna do is give us a nice and crispy outside that is maintaining all that moisture, and it's gonna kind of steam itself inside. So I will be back with you guys as soon as all of this happens, and I'll show you how to make your stacks. All right, I'm back. I just wanted to give you a little bit of a close-up of what's going on in this chicken here. Got the tripod And as you can see, that chicken skin is nice and crispy. All right, now that I have both sides browned, I'm gonna go ahead and drizzle this with a little bit of lemon juice. Again, I'm gonna turn my heat down because water and fat creates explosion. We don't want that. So we're just gonna do a little finishing. I'm gonna have my lid here to help me out. So lemon juice, here we go. Just a little bit right on the chicken. See? Lemon on top of chicken. Lid on top of lemon. All right, so this is going to cook the chicken approximately, especially for dark meat with the bone in, you're gonna wanna go a little bit longer in time. I would say probably 15 minutes, 15-20 minutes, just depending on how big of a cut you have. And then my roasted veggies and potatoes are still in there. So once everything comes together, I will plate it up and we will be good to go. Just wanted to show everybody a little bit what's happening here in my oven. I've got my eggplant and my tomatoes and zucchini and onion sprinkle on top, which I neglected to mention. These guys are starting to roast up just about right. And on my bottom rack here, my potatoes, look how they're getting that beautiful golden color. These are just about done too. So now what I'm going to do is I'm gonna come back up. Remember I said I was going to finish off my chicken in the oven. So I'm just gonna take my chicken and put it here on my potato plate. And then I'm gonna continue to let this roast until everything is done. I just pulled my veggies out of the oven, and as you can tell, these look phenomenal. Like, I couldn't have asked for better roasting. These were in here for, I'd say, about 45 minutes. Of course, I have my chicken on top. My potatoes also came out fantastic. So see how they have that lovely little golden delicious side to it. So I also reserved the drippings from my pan. So now I'm gonna have a nice little jus basically to throw on top of my chicken and my eggplant stacks. Let's go back hands-free and I'll show you how this is done. All right, so now time to put it all together, and this is really simple. All I'm going to do is start with my eggplant. So I'm gonna take a nice meaty piece of eggplant there, and I'll get my head out of the camera. And I'm gonna go with my zucchini next, and then I'm gonna throw a tomato or two on there. So now if you really wanted to make this decadent and you're not worried about dairy, you can always do some hard cheese on top of here. I prefer like a Parmesan Reggiano, Asiago, or if you wanted to be a little bit more indulgent, you could always use a soft cheese like mozzarella and have kind of like a deconstructed like eggplant parm type of deal. So I'm just going to repeat those steps, and of course, you know, I'm going to be consecutive and try and keep my sizes the same with the eggplant, the zucchini, and of course the tomatoes. And the onions that were strung on top, of course, are going to maintain in there. So as you can see, we have this lovely eggplant stack. From here, I'm just going to take my chicken, throw that guy on the plate, and potatoes, of course. Who doesn't love potatoes? And who wouldn't love to sit down to a meal that looked like this? So I hope you learned something new. This is quick and easy, completely within paleo guidelines and Whole30 guidelines. And of course I forgot, can't forget, throw a little juice on there. All right, and I keep cutting my head out. So thank you for experimenting with me this week with the tripod. We'll see how it goes next week. And I'd love to hear from you. So please leave comments, like this video if you like it. If you don't like it, tell me why. And then look for your recipe of the week every Wednesday. See you guys soon.